And we are seconds away. Apparently we've been live for like 10 seconds. Good morning! Well, we are. Something,
Live.
something is happening. Something is weird. Okay, there we are. It said waiting for Brushfire Mind. I thought I was gonna have to update the stream key again. Let's try that again. Good morning! Haha! It's Tuesday. Oh, isn't it? It is Tuesday, right? It's hard to remember.
Taco.
It's hard to remember when you're stuck in the house. Oh, good God. Um, so a little bit of a news piece. I had this thunderbolt of an idea night before last, and made some phone calls to get to try and get a ball rolling. And suddenly it looks like I'm doing a live show on Friday evening this week at 6 o'clock. We'll be streaming on Facebook for that one in conjunction with Polytech and the Rockdale County GOP. It'll be me, Alex McDonald, Toby Dwyer, the chairman of the Rockdale GOP, Larry Cox, and the state senator from McDonough, Brian Strickland. So keep an eye out for that. More updates to come. But this morning, here's what we're talking about. We're asking the question and answering it. Is the cure shaping up to be worse than the disease? Well, let's not put let's not undersell this, as it were. The disease is pretty bad. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. The disease is bad. Um, 1.3 million global cases, according to the COVID tracker. We've got a little less than 8,000 here in Georgia, um, with about 300 deaths. It's not it's not great. It's still not the flu, and I don't mean to undersell that.
Well,
The
8,000 cases, 80 deaths is 1%.
Yes. So
It's still a little more than the flu, basically.
it see these numbers are tricky. Um, these numbers are very very tricky. We almost might as well not have numbers.
Well, yeah, because somehow China still only has 80,000 cases. And yeah, sure. Go ahead, kid. Pull the other one. It's got bells on it.
Yeah. Um, China is clearly lying. Yes. Europe looks like it's having a hard time. That socialized medicine is really working out for them. Um, the rest of the world just kind of looks like it has chicken pox. And okay, so of the cases which are counted numerically, there are a few problems. Only people with severe symptoms are even being tested. And don't take that as a criticism um of the response, as it were. That's that's not a matter of the government or any particular agency not responding with everything they've got. The fact of the matter is there is no there was no way on the outset to test everybody. There will never be a way. You cannot test everybody. Okay? Our flu numbers annually are not based on tests. They're based on projections and computer models. we believe them to be better projections and computer models than the COVID projections and computer models, only because they've been around longer and had more data inputted.
Yes. Yeah, when you're dealing with models, garbage in, garbage out. And I think the point that you're making here is really solid. We have decades of experience with the flu, but there's a lot of it that's a guesstimate. Like if I got the flu, I would just call into work, stay home for a week, stay in bed, drink lots of chicken soup and lots of water. If things got really bad, yeah, I'd go to the hospital. But I know what has to happen if I get the flu. I
Yeah.
need to cozy up, find a series on Netflix, and stay in bed. Um, and the difference between this and coronavirus, of course, is the fact that we don't have decades of experience with coronavirus. We've said on this show that we don't trust the numbers from day one. I remember going all the way back to January when the numbers were at about 10,000, and I made the prediction.
Early January. Yep.
Yeah, that no, they're already 20,000. We just don't know the truth yet. And I still feel like we're in a period where whatever the official number is, double it. There's not 1.3 million people with COVID. There's about 2.6 million people with COVID. But because it presents itself as mild symptoms in so many people, it presents itself as asymptomatic in so many people. And I bet that even with all the panic that's going on out there are people that get a more severe strain of it, but they assume that they've got the flu or whatever, and they just stay in bed.
And drink
Which is
chicken
what you're
soup
supposed to
and
do.
watch TV and relax, and nobody ever knows the difference.
Yep.
Yeah. And it is still the case that the vast majority of severe cases, not just deaths, but the vast majority of severe cases, have been in people over 65 and people with underlying conditions. I think it was Shapiro that made this point, that I agree with him. I don't like that language. What do you mean underlying conditions? What constitutes an underlying condition? Okay, I'm a fat boy, smoke a pack a day, I have diabetes and sleep apnea. Are all of those problems? Are some of those problems? Are none of those problems? Okay, I know the smoker thing doesn't do me any favors. I suspect that all four of those particular conditions are not good for the coronavirus.
Spoiler alert, they're not.
And yeah, thanks, sugar. And you know that paints a pretty grim picture, but my diabetes is well controlled. I'm actually quite healthy, all things considered. Which is a hell of a thing to say for an old combat vet. But they just keep saying with underlying conditions. And what about my rickets? I got four
Stephen
rickets. I got four rickets. No, you don't.
Anyhow.
Anyway,
with the cure being worse than the disease.
Yeah,
Can I point out that it's pretty clear that containment has failed? Truthfully, containment failed somewhere around December or January. That's when containment failed because China lied. Because China is asshole. Okay, like that's really what happened. China could have been more honest from the beginning, and we actually could have nipped this problem in the bud. It's got to be said, it's because they're an authoritarian communist regime. The state and the appearance of the state's power is more important than anything else, including the lives of its citizens.
And this is not the first pandemic. It's not even the second or third pandemic not just out of China, but specifically out of the Chinese wet markets. So let me say this about that. In 5 or 10 years, when we see somebody cough in one of the wet markets, we should Moab that mother. Just, oh, somebody sneezed in the wet market. Let's see. Bird flu, swine flu, COVID-19, and that's not all of them. Yeah, bomb them. Burn it out. And I, I'm not just saying this as a preventative measure to prevent pandemic from occurring again. From the only place that it has occurred from in the last 100 years or so, with the exception of the bit of swine flu that came up through Mexico. China,
West Nile.
China having sick people is the same as China having a bioweapon.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Look,
China has a sickness and China has a bioweapon are not distinct statements.
So here's my big problem with all of it. Over the past couple of weeks, there have been somewhere around 10 million jobless claims that have happened. And that's just in this country. We went from a workforce of, you know, I just blanked on the exact number. Let's just call it 100 million people. And we got knocked down to a workforce of 90 million people. And that ain't over yet. It's nowhere close to over yet. There's this whole Cloward Piven strategy got come up with by some radicals from the 60s, and it basically says that you use the system to overwhelm the system, to collapse the system, to replace the system. To wit, you basically gum up everything in the system with so many welfare claims, the system itself can't keep up, and it collapses. And then you replace it with UBI. Yeah, that's right. And this situation almost seems tailor-made to a Cloward Piven issue because it's almost more important to have the appearance of a crisis than an actual crisis. Let's say there was an actual crisis, like just some massive earthquake in California that left 1 million people dead, or China really did invade the country. Okay, we're talking about a real crisis. Well, what would happen is we'd be forced to be self-sufficient. We'd be forced to build positive relationships with our neighbors and our local communities.
How dare you?
And yeah, I know. Scoldilocks made an appearance. But we'd be forced to kind of go back to our roots, as it were. You'd have to depend on yourself, and you'd have to depend on your neighbor to fill in the gaps. And the same would be true of your neighbor. There'd be no more, oh, I want the federal government to send me a check to get me through this crisis, because a check's not going to help you then. People being good will help you then. And knowing who the people in your local community are will help you then. This, everybody, go home, lose your job. Don't worry. We're going to cut you a check. And one of the things that I'm worried the most about here is this is something that's going to get brought back up. I mean, for the rest of our lives, we're going to hear about, well, wait a minute. The last time we had a national emergency, buddy, we passed a bill and it took less than 30 days and we handed every American a check. Oh, gosh, that's not good, actually. Now, I understand the moral argument that says since the government ordered all these businesses closed, the government has an ethical duty to make these businesses whole.
Yes.
I do understand, especially coming from the insurance world.
That's a very fair argument, yes.
However, gosh, maybe the government shouldn't have ordered all these businesses closed. Because, fine, we'll have a safety net in our system. And safety nets are kind of like parachutes on airplanes, okay? If something goes wrong, the parachutes are for the people. They're not for the plane itself. You can't save the whole plane with a parachute. You can't. You can only save the people on the plane. And now there's so many jobless claims happening that some of the it's happened in Georgia where the state system has actually crashed a couple of times because it was never built to process millions of people a day. It just wasn't. And you'll have lefties that say, well, that's the problem. It should be. Don't give in to that argument. Don't. Because what's going to happen going forward is there's going to be so many people that just think this is how you solve the problem. You let the government tell you what to do, but don't worry, the government's going to give you a check. And there's a country, oh yeah, Saudi Arabia. That's how they keep Saudi Arabia in line. The royal family is literally swimming in swimming pools, lined with gold. And they give massive welfare benefits to their citizens to keep them from rioting. And I'm not interested in being Saudi Arabia. There's also the other side of it, the fact that we're flirting with a global depression. And I don't say that lightly because I don't want for there to be a global depression because it's going to mean that millions of people starve to death. And the countries that it's going to happen first and worst in are third world countries. There would be some problems in a country like the United States. I'd even say there'd be some problems in a country like Russia. But, where it's going to be really bad, it's countries like the Congo. Okay, that's where you're going to have the greatest amount of civil unrest, starvation, people killing each other just for a bag of rice. So,
And I hate that this is the case, but um, America could be fine coming out the other end of this because we're a large country. We have lots and lots of really usable land that hasn't been mismanaged and run into the ground. Um, but once we get to the other side of this, every country in the world, and I do mean every single country in the world, is going to be knocking on our door with their hand out for money, for produce, for food, for whatever aid the U.S. can put out. And we've elected a bunch of cowards who will just say, yeah, okay. No, you can't. You can't feed the world if it means starving yourself.
well, I mean, we need to end the whole toxic charity cycle anyway. Like, what incentive do you have to do the hard work of being a farmer and figuring out how to grow corn or wheat if somebody's just going to give you a stipend every month? Why do all that hard ass work? You won't. You'll just you'll just wait on the you'll wait on the angels that feel obligated to help you because of social justice or racism or any of those other buzzwords that I'm frankly beyond sick of coming from our political class. I mean, let's not forget. Apparently, Adam Schiff is just going to do another investigation on the president. Dude, you and your bug eyes need to get slapped across the face. What is wrong with you? I dare say part of the reason why this got out of control is because even the US government has only got a finite amount of resources. And it turns out that every single damn one of you were wrapped up in this whole, oh yeah, we're going to investigate the president and impeach him thing. And then while all this is going on, you got people like Nancy Pelosi saying Chinese travel ban is racist. In fact, it's so racist, you need to go to Chinatown and shop.
Yeah. To
These are the
prove you're not racist.
Yeah, these are the cowards that we've elected. it's not racist to go, gee, there seems to be an awful lot of disease coming from this one specific area. Maybe we should restrict travel to and from that area. It's not racist. That's smart. Viruses aren't racist. Your reactions to viruses aren't racist. And serious question, how many people wish that the travel ban with China had happened in, like, I don't know, December?
Oh,
I bet there's a whole lot of,
all of them.
yeah, exactly. I bet there's a whole lot of people over 60 years old in Italy that wish it had happened in December. So yeah, the cure is becoming worse than the disease. I do believe we've chosen this course of action. We should stick to it for the time being. Everybody needs to row in the same direction, as it were. But when May 1st rolls around, screw you. It's time to go back to work. And if the disease is still out there, we need to adjust our strategy and insulate the elderly and insulate the immunocompromised. Because at this point, we're not even stopping the spread. We're just slowing the spread, which means we're giving this virus all these extra generations to mutate back and forth. And, you know, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I do know enough about that sort of thing to realize it's pretty freaking dangerous to let viruses mutate over and over and over again. I mean, what if what's going on in New York right now is there's a strain of the virus that mutated that made it more transmissible, more deadly? What if it's just that simple? We slowed this puppy down and actually made it worse. And guess what? We get to collapse the economy on top of everything else. Yay. No, I'm done with it. May 1st, screw you. Be an American. Be a man. Be a human being who's self-sufficient and go to work. Now, to be fair, your job might be there, and I'm sympathetic to that. But at the same time, like, don't listen to the wizards of smart that run the world, because it turns out they're not that smart. They tried to tell us that masks are not effective. What kind of stupid bullshit is that? If masks were not effective, doctors and nurses wouldn't use them. It's just
Oh.
that simple. Anyhow, I still thankfully have a job, not getting quite as many hours as before because, you know, COVID, but I got to put a button on it right there before I start dropping F-bombs and make myself late for work.
Why were you late this morning, Cameron? Because I had to say the fuck word a bunch.
Oh, and there's the F-bomb.
What?
Demonetized.
Yeah. All right.
Achievement unlocked.
That's all I got for this morning. Y'all be safe out there. Stay home. Wash your hands. Wear a mask. And don't get the woo flu. We'll see you tomorrow. Wrong button.
Whoosh.
There's the button.
There you go. Wash your damn hands. Oh, and at this point, wear a damn mask. All right, buddy.
No doubt.
Gone.
Later, brother.